All right, Ian. Ian, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I was born in Denver. I was raised in a place called Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you see a lot of these people with crazy stories and they come from the ghetto or the hood. And, my story's a little different. I grew up in a middle to upper class family, but I had this crazy energy inside of me. And it got me in so much trouble. By the age of 25, I was kicked out of a country and a continent. And I realized I need to make some changes. Something's wrong with me. And it always was the common denominator of drugs and alcohol, which I was very addicted to. But when I was 11 years old, I had a relationship with God. I got baptized, and my family was, for the most part, pretty normal and structured, and my parents loved me. But at the age of 13, I started to get into some trouble, little stuff, getting kicked out of class, just had this crazy energy inside of me. And my parents didn't know what to do, so they took me to the hospital or the doctor, and they said, your son has ADD, ADHD, and I was prescribed Adderall. And I come from a long line of addiction. My father, my uncle, my cousins, they all struggle with alcoholism, drugs. So if you give a 13-year-old kid meth, basically what Adderall is, it started me down this line. And as people know, when you do drugs and you cloud your mind, you lose that relationship with God. And I really don't talk about it that much, but the severity of the drugs I was doing, it then went from weed, and then I was drinking alcohol. But at the age of 16 and 17, I was doing like a Steve-O amount of drugs on a daily basis. I was then prescribed Xanax because I was so wound up from all the Adderall. I maxed out my dosage on Adderall because with being addicted, you just want more. And I had this crazy energy, anything I did, it was all or nothing. And at that time, I was putting it to something very negative, which was doing drugs and partying. When I was in high school, we didn't have all the social media. So it was all about going to parties and having this social life. And at one point, when I was 16, I was popping Adderall in the morning, smoking weed all day. Then I would drink a couple bottles of Southern Comfort. Then I was sniffing Coke. Then I was popping Xanax. And then I would take some Valium to go to sleep. And this was a weekday. And then on the weekends, we were going and taking a bunch of ecstasy all day and just mixing all these different drugs. And this was even before I really got big into painkillers. So even with all these drugs that I was doing, I was a 2-time state champ. I was a 2-time national champ.
In what?
Wrestling.
And
I was a couple-time All-American. So I was very successful. I was getting letters from Stanford and all these colleges that wanted to give me a full ride scholarship. But
what age was this?
When I was a freshman and junior.
Okay, before the drugs really.
Before they got really heavy.
Before the heavier drugs.
Yeah. So then at the age of, I think it was probably 16 or 17, I was a junior in high school. I had a wrestling tournament. I drank 2 bottles of Southern Comfort, sniffed a bunch of Coke, popped Xanax, and drove home.
Is that bad?
And I was seeing double, and I used to do this thing where I would close one eye, and I just totally fell asleep, man. I was driving my Mustang, drove off the road, missed a tree by inches, and missed a sign by 2 feet. And I believe that was one of many times God gave me a second chance because I woke up and my tires were spinning. And I ran home. I still won the tournament the next day, which was a really bad thing for me because it was I can party and still win. And everyone was so mad that I won. But then the drugs started getting really bad. I was talking crazy, I'm going to kill the police. I was just totally controlled by this addiction. And my parents knew they needed to do something. So they sent me to Rehab in Utah. And it was a great place. They had a circle of rocks they put us in, and they take our shoes off. And if you tried to run, they would chase you down with horses and rope you and hog tie you. So there was no way out. And a lot of famous people went to this rehab, like the Cash Me Outside girl and stuff like that, maybe Paris Hilton. But I wasn't ready to change inside. I wasn't ready to give my life to a higher power. I wasn't ready to surrender my lifestyle. I still liked the party. So I came back my senior year, got expelled, just a habitual offender, got caught with weed or something stupid. And then I got a full ride scholarship to a junior college, went to Idaho, another big opportunity that I blew. They paid for my books, my schooling, everything was paid for, everything was taken care of. First day I got there, I went to jail.
Today's video is sponsored by Aura. Did you know companies can take months to report a data breach? On average, it's 277 days before you even find out that your personal data was exposed. That means your sensitive information, like your email, your phone number, or even financial details, could already be out there. And it's not just one company. Major banks and corporations have all experienced breaches in the past year. Your information could be compromised right now and you wouldn't even know it. That's why I use Aura. Aura scans the dark web and alerts me fast if my personal information has been leaked. If someone tries to open a bank account or a credit card in my name, I'll know right away. They also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and a full suite of tools to keep you protected, all in one app. You can try Aura free for 14 days at aura.com/softwhiteunderbelly. That's 2 weeks to find out if your data has already been exposed before you hear it from a company months later. Why wait? Take control of your digital security right now. And now back to the video. Thank you for watching.
Right? I was drunk walking down the street, drinking underage, tore the ticket up, got a littering, then ran from the police, then they caught me, then I spit on their car, I got a disturbing the peace. So you can see I was just out of control kid at this time. Came back to Colorado, it was 2008. My parents had just got divorced and they lost their house. They tried to sell their house and everybody was hurting at that time. It was the housing crisis, it was like a recession. And so I came back and now I had nothing. And I had this girl call me from Canada and she said, come out here and be my prom date. I used to date her in high school. I went out to Canada. I fell in love with Vancouver and I got a job doing door-to-door sales, which was one of the best things I needed that. I was making $2,000 to $4,000 a week, but that was fueling these parties and these addiction. Now I could go to the club legally and I'm just blowing money, sniffing coke. I meet these Guatemalans and I get in trouble in Canada and they lock me up for 8 months and deport me back to the States. Now I'm back to America, broke, hopeless, and I'm just trying to make some money. Well, when I was in Canada, I met these Guatemalan connection. And they had, my goal was always to get the best connection because the amount of drugs I was doing was not cheap. I had to fuel this. So my idea of fueling it was I need to make myself have the best connection so I can connect the dots. I wanted to be the connect so I can make the money and take a portion so I was able to fuel my addiction. Wanting this got me to where I was getting kilos for $900 in Cali, Colombia. But fast forward, or going back to this story, I was getting shipments of ecstasy sent over, 2,000 pills a week. And I was sending Western Unions back. They started to freeze the Western Union. I have a Bitcoin story. My boy told me to buy Bitcoin and use that. It was 17 cents at the time. And I was like, I don't understand this, man. Imagine if I bought $100 worth. But he eventually sent a guy with 100,000 pills down. And he was giving me 10,000 pills a week. And we were going to the raves and just selling it. And eventually it was getting so crazy, I was just wholesaling it. And we would just give him the cash. Well, my buddy was dating this chick, and after we were hanging out with her for a while, we never told her we sold drugs, but she wasn't stupid. She kept asking me, hey, Ian, let me get a boat, which means 1,000 pills ecstasy. And I'm like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. Finally, she says, hey, he's going to pay this absurd amount and I'll drive. And I said, all right, let's go. So we pull in this Walmart parking lot. We park the car. This sketchy looking dude gets in the car and he's kind of shaky and I already see he doesn't have enough money. And I said, this is bad. Pull the car and let's go through the McDonald's drive-thru. As she pulls the car out, we get smashed in the front, smashed in the back. The cops jump out and I'll never forget, pistol to my temple on the pavement, staring at the broken Walmart sign. And I was like, man, I'm going to go to jail for a very long time. I posted bail the next day. I went back and my mindset was, no way am I spending my teenage years and my 20s, early 20s in prison. So I went to a post office and they issued me a passport. And I said, let's go. So my dad was actually cool with it. My dad was like one of the boys. He partied with me and he was like, yeah, if you want to go on the run, go on it. And so I dropped on a bus to Chicago, said goodbye to my family, hopped on a train to JFK, Said goodbye to my family in New York. JFK to Amsterdam with $2,000 in my pocket, and I didn't know anyone. I was now a fugitive on the run. And as you know, if you try to run from your problems, it's gonna follow you. And I had issues with these drugs and alcohol. So get to Amsterdam, get in trouble right away. They let me out. Just drunk on the streets, crazy, drinking absinthe, sniffing coke, like instantly run out of money. I called my friend in Belgium, or my friend in New York, or my cousin, and he had a friend in Belgium, and he said, hey, you can come live with me and we can see if we can get a job. I got a job at an Irish pub, got in trouble there, went to England, started to try to sell ecstasy over there, was getting shipments over there. It was a terrible drug scene. And I said, you know, I can't do this anymore. I sold what I had. I jumped on a flight to Tenerife, the Canary Islands. It was like paradise to me. And I was walking down the street and I saw beautiful women. I was drinking and I was like, this is heaven. This is paradise for me. I walked to the clubs and immediately they're like, yeah, you're hired. Come on. They were giving me 8 drinks when I worked, 4 drinks when I got off. And I was getting €1 per person that I was bringing in. We were sitting on the side of the street just doing drugs and drinking and just getting people to come in the club. Well, 3 months of this, I was a full-blown alcoholic. Like, I drank from morning to night. Like, there wasn't a second I was awake that I couldn't drink. I would wake up shaking. And that was rock bottom. I was homeless. I couldn't even afford 30 euros in a cockroach-infested apartment with 3 other dudes. And I was sleeping on the beach. Sometimes I would have to dig down when it was too windy so I wasn't getting hit by the wind. I was sleeping on park benches, man. That was rock bottom for me. Like, I was hopeless. I was willing to do anything to continue to feed the addiction because I had to, first off. But second off, I just needed a way out of this life that I was in. And I couldn't go back to America. I felt trapped. So there was these Americans that were Colombian, and his dad was Colombian, but he was born in Miami. He said, hey, gringo, come live with us. They took me in like family. They said, we don't want to see you living like that. Well, about 3 months of getting sober, working out, eating good food, the dad sat me down. He's like, hey, gringo, you want to make some real money? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And he's like, Colombia, gringo. And I was like, let's go. So we started taking trips to Colombia, Venezuela, Aruba. We would get the kilos of cocaine, wrap it up, and we would swallow it and bring it back, basically being a mule. And he was paying me pretty good, but then I was able to take some of the merchandise and sell it on my own. About 4 trips into this black guy stops me at the airport, throws out a badge, and I'm like, he's like, who are you? I'm like, no comprende, sir. And he's like, secret police, sit down. And I sit down with this beautiful chick and this sketchy looking dude. And I asked the girl, I'm like, hey, what are we doing here? And she's like, the x-ray. And I'm like, I'm sitting with a kilo of cocaine in my stomach. And I'm like, dude, I'm looking at a long time in prison. And now it's in Colombia. And the Colombians, every time we'd wrap this cocaine, there was this shiny paper that they would put on it. And they said, this is what's going to pass the x-ray. And I was like, nah, like, I mean, in my mind, I was like hoping it was true, but in my mind, I was like, they're just telling me this so I feel better. So I went in this room, probably the size of this, put my hands up, this big machine. I've never been so nervous in my life. I walk over, they said, Tiene buen día, Señor Heinisch, which means have a good day. I fingerprinted, I signed, and got smashed with a shot of adrenaline that I could never replicate. Even in fighting, it was like that level of winning a fight. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I just walked out of that. And I walk in, I get on the plane, the Colombian I'm with, because we would act like we're not with each other. He's looking back, and I'm like, I'm good. And it was just like, it was actually bad because then we started to get cocky. And we were like, oh, well, what are they going to do, x-ray us? So then we started taking trips faster. We used to take breaks. We would stay there for 3 months and then take a trip. We started going month to month, back and forth, back and forth. And at this time, we could get a kilo for $900. We could turn it into 2 kilos and we could sell it for 75,000 euros. So we were making basically 100,000, which honestly isn't that much. I was at such a low point in my life, though, that it was like, I mean, I was risking one of those balls breaking in my stomach. Like, if that happens, you just foam at the mouth, drop dead. And we've heard these stories. And so about 14 trips of this, we get we get at this airport and they stop me again and they say, come to the office, which this has happened before. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but they pull me in the office. They say, why do you keep coming here? Why are you keep coming to our island? And I say, oh, I'm a rich American. I have a girlfriend, this and that. And they say, where's your credit cards? Like, things just didn't add up. The girlfriend came in. She validated that it was me. They let us go out. And the Colombian, he should have left in a Uber or taxi, but he waited for us in the parking lot. Secret police jumped on us. Now, this time in Spain, they don't have a fancy airport, so they didn't have the x-ray in the airport. So they took us to the hospital. Now, the hospital is a different x-ray. That's like the serious one where they put the plaque on the wall and they x-ray you like this. And they put the thing on the mirror or on the light. You have balls of drugs in your intestines. What is it? And she's yelling at me in Spanish. I'm like, it's not. She's like, it's seguro. Boom, they slapped the handcuffs on and now end up in prison in Spain in a foreign country. And they asked me if I want to call the embassy, and I'm like, no, I'm good, because I was on the run for felony warrants. So now I have this option, right? What am I going to do in prison? Am I going to continue to use drugs, which still plagued me? Obviously, I couldn't get the alcohol. I didn't have the connections to get the type of drugs that I was using on the streets. I mean, when we were in Colombia, we were using 50 grams a week minimum. Like, I would get so coked out and black out, and I was taking Xanax on top of everything. I'd just wake up in like a prayer position, like, and my heart was just pounding. So we had to come off the drugs in prison, and I made this decision, man. I said, dude, I am not like these people. I need to do something. And that's when God started putting this dream in my heart. And he said, you're going to be UFC champ when you get out of prison, and you're going to proclaim my name to the world. And so I made a decision in prison. I said, you know what? I'm going to do things different. I'm going to start training my mind, body, and spirit. I started reading books for the first time in my life. I started training everything I could possibly do. They had a wrestling program, which it took 3 months to get into the program, but I showed him my ears. He said, you're in right away. They had a kickboxing program, which had the K1 champion there, used to beat me up and teach me stuff. And they had a strength conditioning program. So I basically turned prison into a fight camp. And that's where I got my nickname, the Hurricane, because Rubin Carter, the boxer, when prisons used to be able to, in America, used to be able to train, he came out and became a world champ. So that's kind of where I got my nickname in fighting. And so I'm in prison for a year, no court, no sentence. So I had no idea what was happening. They can keep you up to 4 years without sentencing you, which is crazy. It's a lot of mind games in this prison. But finally I got my sentence, and it was a 3.5 year sentence. For 1 kilo or less, you get 3 to 6 years and this is what I found out. If you have like 1,000 kilos, if you have 10 tons, you only get 6 to 10 years in Spain. So I was blessed that I got caught in at least a country that wasn't very severe on drugs. And so I started training, man. I was still hooked on my Xanax that they had to give me, and I was still using a little bit, but I started beating these guys in the Lucha Canaria. I loved it, this wrestling style. It was a gladiator pit of sand, and the whole prison would come, and you'd wear this like gi, and you would go shoulder to shoulder. Best out of 3 takedowns. When you beat the little guy, then you get the next big guy, then the next big guy. So it was kind of like a wrestling team sport, and they get it from the Senegal Africans. And I loved it. They brought in a professional team, and me and this American, we beat the whole team. They put us in the newspaper. And then the president of the Federation of Lucha Canaria wrote the warden, and he said, we want to keep this guy. We want to sign him when you get out. So my mind is like, maybe I'm here to be a professional Lucha Canaria wrestler. Like, I actually thought this, and I wanted to potentially get out. But the Spanish are very like racist in a way where they don't want an American to come dominate in their sport, because this is like the island sport. So one day I wake up, I get a bag thrown in my face, cell door opens, this chick screaming at me. She's like one of the wardens. Pack your stuff, get out of here. And I'm like, what? I had my girlfriend there. I had my guy who was bringing me contacts, which I had terrible vision. And I was like, seriously, you're going to move me from here? I was like, I want to stay here. Get out. They were pissed because we actually had another wrestling tournament with an outside team who's a professional, and they told me not to do an interview, and I did the interview, and I was like, I did jiu-jitsu, I did wrestling, but there is nothing more than I love than Lucha Canaria. Because I really was like, I'm going to make this a career. Like, maybe God has me here to make this a career.
They didn't want you.
They didn't want me.
That's crazy.
They were mad. And it was crazy because the coach that I was with, Juan Espino, is his son, who is a UFC fighter, now very successful, was the best to ever do Lucha Canario. His dad was in there for like 50 kilos. He was my coach in there. And I ended up meeting his son in the UFC like 5 years later, which was kind of a cool like story to actually meet the coach's son. And the guy's a freaking legend. So I was trained by some of the best people in prison. Like this was no coincidence. But anyways, they take me, and I'm talking, this is like the movies, bro. Con Air. Police in ski mask. We're like this walking. If you lift your head up, they smack you in the head. Open your mouth. They're digging their fingers all up in your mouth. Take your shoelaces out. And they put us on a commercial jet. They shut a part down of the airport, and they put us on a commercial plane with murderers, rapists, terrorists, all these crazy people, probably 150 people. And they Con Aired us to the north of, or to the Spain main island. And then they took me to a bus all the way up to a place called Leon, Spain. In this prison, they had a boxing program with one of the boxing champs. I immediately fell in love with boxing. We would have matches in there. I did 2 activities of boxing, 1 of weightlifting. So it was just like, God just like led me step by step of training. First day I get to this prison, I knock this dude down. Because, you know, when you're in prison, you can't get punked, especially the first day. And they put me in isolation for 3 weeks. And, dude, 2 weeks into this, I am losing my mind, like counting the cracks in the room. I rolled my bed up. I was using it as a punching bag. I was doing yoga. I was doing handstands, like just like talking to myself at this point. And I'm just like, I get to this point where I was just like, dude, I am freaking out. And I just broke down. And I was just like, God, if you're real, help me. And I'm just looking around, and there's a book, and it's the Bible, but it's full in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish good yet. And I don't read scripture, especially scripture. But dude, I opened this Bible, man, and I read it like it was my first language. And God was just like, He created the world. He created man and woman, and He made everything good. And this warm feeling just fell on my chest, dude, and tears rolled down my eyes. And I was just like, thank you, God. Like, I just had this peace. And the next week of isolation, I was just at such peace for the first time in a long time. And you would have thought that would have been the changing point, but I still fell back. 2.5 years, I signed a paper that I won't come back to Spain or Europe for 5 years. So they cut my sentence by 2/3. So they threw me on a plane. I flew to JFK. That's where they were sending me, to New York. I land in New York. I am now a free man for the first time in about 2 years and 6 months. I walk in, I'm just like, dude, this is amazing. They gave my passport to the flight attendant. They took the handcuffs off me. They put me on the plane. And I was just like, wow, like I'm free. Get to JFK and I'm like, dude, here we go. Felony warrants, right? And I'm just like, man, I'm thinking in my head, I was like, should I run? Nah, you can't run. 9/11, they're way too high security. So I was like, whatever, just got to go through it. So I scanned my passport. How long you been out the country, sir? A while. What's a while? I was like 5 years. Yeah, come with us. Passport scanned red, called police over right away, escorted me through, handcuffed, put me in a holding cell for like 24 hours, hearing like people get questioned and beat. Like it was a gnarly experience. Like people don't realize the immigration process. And sometimes they have to like scare these guys to tell the truth because people come with fake passports, fake identification, and they have no idea who they are. Then they sent me to Jamaica Queens jailhouse, and it was a Thursday, and they kept me there till Monday. That was disgusting. I mean, crackheads, pimps, heroin addicts, like it was just a revolving door of just crazies. And I'm just sitting there just like, dude, and they keep bringing people in, calling people out, bringing people in, calling people out. So I go to the guards, like, what's up? I've been in here for 3 days. Shut up, you're a different case. And I'm just like, all right. So finally that Monday comes, my lawyer comes and she's like, all right. She's like, you need to go to protective custody. And I was like, why? She's like, you're going to Rikers Island. And at the time I had no idea what this place even was. And I was like, I've been in prison 2.5 years. You throw me at the wolves, I'll lead the pack. Like that was my mindset. I was around terrorists. I was around crazy people in Spain. We were fighting all the time. And I said, I'm good. So they took me on this bus, and the judge said I have no parole, no bail, and they're going to extradite me back to Colorado where I had these warrants. And they're driving on this bus, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, dude, this is really an island. Like, I didn't know what Rikers Island was. And we're passing these gates of security, and we're passing another gate of security. And we start walking to the cell block. And people are screaming everywhere. It's just like chaos. It's like a zoo. It's like you came in like a zoo and like there's like animals out and like there's like people beating the animals, and it was just chaos. And I'm walking to the cell block, and the dude's like, "Man, you must be one bad white boy." And I'm like, "Why is that?" He's like, "We don't see many of you around here." And I'm just like, "Oh man, where am I?" They put me in maximum security because I was a fugitive on the run. That was the hardest 5 weeks of my life, probably, because instantly I walked to my cell, got rushed. Who are you, this, that, putting a Snicker bar under my pillow. You owe us if you touch that. Look. I'm just like, dude, get out of here, guys. Like, and luckily I spoke Spanish pretty fluent at the time. So I kind of made a connection with the Spanish gang, right? Because I could speak to them, and I was just like talking in Spanish, and I'm like, this is my story. And they're like, wow, you're crazy. And I was just like, look, if you guys ever need connections, like I was just trying to work any angle that I could to have some type of ally in there, because I remember getting my food at lunch for the first time, and you walk in this little like dining hall, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, dude, who am I going to sit with? Because like a guy told me, he's like, you strong, but a lone wolf gets eaten in places like this. And thank God one of the Latin guys like, hey, gringo, sit with us. And I was like, man, thank God. So every day looking over my shoulder, I was just trying to train and just continue to keep this. I was shadowboxing in my cell. They had no gym there. I was just doing prison workouts all the time. One of the leaders from the other gang, he see me shadowbox. He'd be like, you fight, white boy? We fight for real on the streets. And I'm like, cool story, bro. Like, whatever. I'm just trying not to make any trouble, bro, because I know I'm there temporary. These guys are there for a long time, and I just want out of there. And prison in America is so different because everybody's just sitting around fighting over toasters, chairs, like different like areas. And it's just like, dude, I see why it's so bad. The guards are coming in and going, what up, blood, to the inmates because they're boys on the street. But Obama made Section 8 living be able to get government jobs, so they just don't have a criminal record or they haven't got caught. So they make them guards, and then they're all friends with all the boys on there, so they're helping each other out. And then a rival gang member gets thrown in with them, and they just beat him. And the guard's sitting there reading his newspaper. I'm watching. I'm looking over while I'm eating. This dude's bloody on the floor, and they're soccer kicking him as they walk by. And, I mean, I don't know if he died, but people died all the time at Rikers Island. If you haven't seen a documentary, watch the Khalif Broder documentary. Jay-Z did it. I don't know if you saw that. It's gnarly. It's sad. The dude ended up killing himself because he was so traumatized by what happened to him. But so it's getting to the end of my stint, and they keep calling me. They say, Ian, let's go to court. So they would take me and handcuff me, and it sucks when you have to go to court because you have to pull your pants down, squat and cough, stand in this line for hours. Then they bring you in the court. You go in this dirty holding cell, and they feed you gross peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I would sit there for 8 hours, no judge, no lawyer. They'd send me back. They did this 3 days in a row. And then finally I was like, I'm not going to go. And they said, you're going to go, or we're going to tase you. So I was like, all right. I went, and I came back in a really bad mood, and this dude wanted to use my phone. And, we would sell our phone calls for chips and stuff like that. And I was like, nobody's using my phone. And it was one of the dudes who was saying he could fight for real on the street. So he's like, hey, meet me in the back. So I was like, all right, we're going to fight. And I walk back there, and dude pulls this nasty looking shank on me. And I'm just like, dude, like I thought we were going to fight. And I, I learned some stuff in prison. So I was like, dude, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. And I just saw his chin. He dropped his guard. Boom. Hit him. He falls down. All his boys come running up. And I take my shirt off, wrap it around my hand. And I'm ready to grab knives because I know they're going to stab me from every direction. Maybe I get my hand on knives and punch. But that's when the Latin guy jumps in front. He's like, no. And he kind of got in the middle of us. And he's like, yo, white boy got heart. He with us. And so the guards come and they break it up. They throw us in the cell. And Fingers comes up to me, one of the leaders, and he's missing fingers. He was my boy. And he's like, hey, man, we protected you, but you're not one of us. This gang, they got a SOS on you. And I was like, what's that? Stab on sight. Wherever you're going to go, they're going to stab you. You got to get out of here, man. You got to go to protect custody. So I'm like, okay, guard. I'm yelling over him, and I'm like, come over here, man. Get me out of here. They're going to kill me. They're going to kill me in the morning. We got to get me out of here. I'll never forget the look on his face. He goes, F you, white boy. Boom! Slams that door in my face. And I was like, gosh. So I stayed up all night, man. Fingers was passing me over Suboxone. I was just popping it. I'm up praying, God, please help me. I'm making like armor with the sheets, how I'm gonna stuff it in my pants so like I won't take the stab wounds as bad, because I seen them do this before, because they're boys with the guards, so they're saying, hey, this is one of our enemies. Open up his cell door, open up our cell door before anyone come out. We go handle it. And so I was like, okay, they're going to rush me in the morning. So I'm like moving my mattress around. Like I'm just like getting ready. And I'm trying to figure out how these guys make knives, because it's like an art to make these weapons. Like they take little cracks off the wall or metal. So I'm up all night just praying to God, just trying to. And at 5 a.m., 1 hour before the doors open, Heinisch, and I jump. And they're like, I'm like, who are you? And they look at me crazy because my whole cell is tore apart. And I look at them, and I've been up all night, and they're like, U.S. Marshal, pack your stuff, you're out of here. And I was just like, oh, thank you, God. And they grab me, and they shackle me up, and they walk me down that hall. And these guys are like, wherever you go, we're going to get you. And I'm like, you ain't coming to Colorado, hopefully. And these guards were like, or the U.S. Marshal, they're like, do you have passport or anything? I was like, nope, let's go. And I just wanted out of there, man. And it was just like, thank you, God. Because I don't think I was going to make it much longer in there. And especially with these guards on their side. So after that, you think it was going to get easier, but actually it got harder. These guys shackled me up like this, and we drove around America for 11 days in circles. We went to Pennsylvania, Vermont, back to New York. 48 hours later, I'm sitting in a van like this, shackled, and we're back in New York. And I'm just like, dude, this is going to take forever, because I guess they make money when they're transporters, right? They're the U.S. Marshal. And we get back in there. The air conditioner, or the heater's broken. It's February in New York, so we're freezing at night, and they're just driving through the night, and we're just like shivering. There's no sleeping. You're just bouncing like this. You complain about anything, they cut your food off. And I remember I had to pee so bad. I was like, dude, I got to pee, man. And they were like, deal with it. He opened the back door and bounced a Gatorade bottle off my head. And I grabbed the bottle, and I just like, it was terrible, man. I'm like, dude, they treat us like animals. So I just quit drinking water. 11 days later, we finally make it to Denver, Colorado, Jefferson County. 2014 Valentine's Day, my mom posted bail. I was a free man for the first time. I was skinny, malnourished, and just that feeling of coming out of prison. Everything was moving so fast. I felt like I was gone for 5 years. So I felt like technology had grew so much. And I posted bail, and my dad had me meet him at a yoga class downtown. So I went from like all like Spanish and Arabs to like all Latinos and blacks to all white boys in this Jefferson County to freaking a yoga class. Like I was laughing, like my mind was so blown at that moment. And I knew the common denominator for me was I can't drink. Drinking has always been the common denominator. So I was like, whatever you do, do not drink. I found a gym. The coach was very structured, and I needed that in my life. I started training 4-0 as a professional, all knockouts, all submissions. Then I went pro. I went 8-0 as a professional, and I'm just climbing the ranks, blowing up on the scene. Like I had this aura of just like grit, because I just came out of like the craziest scenarios. So like these fights were nothing to me, and I was just running through these guys. And I made it to the fight, the pinnacle of my career, where they said, Ian, if you win this fight, you go to the UFC. If you lose, you're in the back of the line. 1 year before this fight, I had tore my LCL in a sparring round before a fight. I went to the doctor. They said, here's 40 Percocets. Instantly hooked. I was taking Oxy. I mean, if you guys heard this story before, imagine now I've focused this drug addiction on painkillers. I'm smoking it. I'm sniffing it. I'm popping pills. It was such a vicious cycle. I was popping painkillers and Adderall and showing up to sparring and just freaking just no pain and just like hyped up. It was so bad for my body. And I would quit 3 weeks before a fight. I would get deathly ill, sick from the withdrawals. And then I would cut weight, make weight, and then I would go fight. And then to celebrate the fight, back taking painkillers, man. And I would go to Mexico and I would buy all these Oxys over the counter, ship them back, fill my suitcase. So I was always supplied. And my dad was doing it too. He was struggling with it. He had a prescription for it. My uncle was doing it. We were all hooked on it. I had 3 friends die from it. 2 of them were in wrestling and another buddy overdosed. My other buddy that I was running with back in the day, they all started doing heroin because the painkillers were too expensive. So they started shooting it. I was like close to that point, but I was always afraid of needles. So I couldn't do that part. And I always found a way to supply. So I went into this fight that I was supposed to win and I got submitted first round. It was my first loss and I was just devastated, man. I said, man, Ian, you really messed this one up. You're back hooked on drugs. You had this crazy life experience that you changed your life. You found God, and now you're hooked on drugs again. And I went on this camping trip after, and I remember I had went to church when I first got out of prison, but they just talked about money. And I was just like, I don't need church. They just want your money. I don't need it. But that was a big mistake because I didn't have that. Someone keeping me accountable or someone building me up and just having that fellowship. I didn't have that. So I started going to Bible study in church, but I was still using drugs, like still hooked completely. And I went on this camping trip and Nate the Great Marquardt, a UFC legend, was like kind of mentoring me. And he gave me this Bible study. He's an amazing man of God. He's a pastor. And he gave me this Bible study. I went on this camping trip. All I wanted to feel was pain. I chopped wood till my hands bled. We went on this hike where when we summited the peak, we hit 70 miles an hour wind. I still hiked for another hour. My buddy almost got hypothermia and died. And I just wanted to feel pain, man. I was just hurting so bad. And I was at the point where I was just like, dude, I don't want to live. Like, I can't get off drugs, man. Like, I just couldn't. Like, there was nothing I could do. I've been to rehab. I've been to prison. Like, what's going to get me off drugs? Like, because I have this opportunity and I just blew it. How many opportunities is God going to give me? But I just keep blowing them. So we finally opened this Bible study that he gave me. I'm like, I don't even want to do this, man. And my boy's like, come on, let's just read it. So we start reading this Bible study and it's like, it challenged our salvation. And it was like, you're not really saved, are you? And at first I'm offended. I'm like, who are these guys to say we're not saved? Like, we go to church, we go to this Bible study, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks, man. It was like, you are living as a hypocrite. You have no power of God because you are hooked and you are controlled by your addiction. And you have not been able to break that your entire life. And at that moment, man, I said, you know what? God, take my life or I'm going to take it because I don't want this anymore. I didn't want to be alive. Not that I was going to pull a gun to my head, but I would do drugs. I would take that handful of drugs and chug that tequila until I went to sleep and didn't wake up. I was at that point. And there was just a lightness that came upon me. I remember I had another pill of Oxy and I took it and I flushed it down the toilet. And then I went to church that next week. And it was a baptism call. And I felt so strongly that I need to go in that water. And God was pulling on my heart. And I went in that water, man. It looked clear to me. I got baptized. I walked out. I looked back and the water was black. And it was God saying to me, there is your addiction and your sin dead. At that time, I was broke. I was living in my buddy's basement. I wasn't in the UFC. And I had nothing going on for me. 1 year later, I broke into the UFC. I was now number 9 in the world. I met my wife, married my wife, bought a house, and I was a tax-paying citizen for the first time in my life. So God instantly opened up the floodgates of blessings. And I'm not telling people out there that when you give your life to God, it's going to be easy, because that's not true. Since then, I suffered health issues, and then I lost my last fight. And when I went back to training, I took a concussion that freaking rung my bell. And I've had concussions before, but this one was just, it wouldn't go away. Light sensitivity, nausea, confusion, anxiety. And it was getting to the point where I was like, I need to fight. I need to fight. I had this voice in my head. I have to fight. I'd go to the gym, try to drill, not get hit in the head. Somebody would fall into me and hit my head. And I'm just like, dude, what is going on? I need to get back in there. I booked a fight. It was one of the easiest fights I could have had. No offense to this guy, but I was fighting top 10 guys in the world. And one day I was driving to the gym and I missed my turn. And then I missed my next turn. And all of a sudden I said, where am I? Like, am I in Colorado or Florida? And it was one of the scariest moments of my life. I legit did not know where I was, even the state. So I pulled over, had like an anxiety attack, called my wife. I said, I can't go to the gym anymore. I don't even care about training anymore. I called the UFC. I freaked out on them, and they were just like, they were actually cool with it. I thought they were going to be like, no, you're cut. So I was just like, God, why have you redirected me? Why? Because there was only 9 people in front of me to win this belt. And I didn't understand why. I could have just won the belt. I could have proclaimed his name, shared this testimony, and it would have been an inspiration. And he would have been glorified. But that wasn't his plans. And I had to realize that fighting, being a UFC fighter, was not my identity. Now God has redirected me, and I'm able to share my testimony. My troubles have turned into this powerful testimony. And now I've started Spirit and Truth Media. We're going to be the biggest Christian media company. We're bringing testimonies to light. We're buying a ranch at the end of this year, early next year, and we're going to start a faith-based treatment center. We're going to make people work hard days on the ranch, and then we're going to make them train MMA, and it's going to be a spiritual boot camp. We're going to show them the testimonies on the YouTube channel. And then someday when their lives are transformed, they're going to be able to share their testimonies. But man, it hurt. I dedicated 10 years of my life. My whole identity was in this fighting. I still have my UFC contract, but I'm getting ready to go to Cellular Performance Institute in Tijuana, Mexico to do my stem cells again. They've been amazing. So that's been a big help to me. But right now, God has put me in this place. I've linked up with one of my old buddies who was a heroin addict. His life was completely transformed. He now has a church in Panama. He has a wife, 4 beautiful kids, went on 4 years of mission. And God brought us together, and we are going to run this ranch together, and we're going to run this mission together. So it's been a heck of a life, and I'm just free from the drug addiction, and that makes me more happy than anything. Because I was rock bottom in a foreign prison cell, fully addicted to drugs my entire life. And God brought me to the highest of the high in the UFC, to the lowest of the low with a brain injury that changed my life forever. But now I'm able to use this story and these marketing skills and the crypto that I've fallen into the crypto world. And now I still have a piece of this fighting. I'm going to be able to be a commentator on a brand new fight promotion called Ice Wars. It's hockey fights that's ran by Bare Knuckle Boxing. So all these pieces that come together have been a blessing, but it's been all God, and it's been all something that I had to surrender and take my hands off the wheel, because every time I've tried to control my life, I end up addicted to drugs, hopeless, suicidal, and have nothing going for me, and everything falls apart. So it's a blessing to even be on this podcast today.
Crazy story.
And I appreciate you, Mark.
The ADHD is kind of like the core of it all, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say just there's this something inside of me that whatever I do, I do it to the max. I overdo it. And when you focus that towards drugs, because when I got in the UFC, it took me 4 years to get to the top 10. No one does that. Mm-hmm. But I had that Like, I'm going to do it again and again and again, and I'm going to overdo it. I'm going to overtrain. I'm going to push so hard, my body to the limit, and it brought me to very great success very fast. But imagine when I focused out of negative stuff like drug use and other stuff, I'm going to die fast also.
You do everything to the hilt.
Yeah. All or nothing. So if there's people out there that struggle with addiction, just know you have an edge. You actually have like a superpower. And if you use that to something positive, something God has for you, you can excel faster because you have that impulsive disorder, that ADD, that just drive to just do it over and over and over. What do drug addicts do? They just do drugs over and over and over. But if you do that to something positive, the reps that you're going to get, you're going to outdo your competition.
Fascinating life you've led so far.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're going in a better direction now.
Yeah. Yeah. Praise God.
All right.
Yeah. If you guys want to check me out, ianheinisch.com. I have my website, all my socials. There's an email list if you want to be part of the journey or just get updates of what's going to happen. I feel the best is yet to come, and that gives me hope. And God's given me hope for another start, and I'm finally free of my addiction, man. And that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Ian. When I was designing the first Soft White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.